Have mom tuck you in and the dad you accidentally murdered turned into a pickle. It's time for episode 2 of Welcome to Derry, and there are more new theories and clues here than dead kids. If you're new to my videos, we cut out all the recap and focus on only the biggest theories, hidden details, and what will happen next. There will be minor book and film spoilers, and I've saved any trailer sleuthing till the end of the video, but I'll give you a warning before we get there. Now before we begin, like, subscribe, and leave a floating red balloon in the comments. I write, edit, and produce my videos all by myself, and every little bit helps the channel out. Episode 1 ended with Suzie and Veronica being the only two to survive the Capitol Theater massacre. And I gotta say, it was pretty hilarious that HBO released a new poster where they've just swapped out Phil and Theo with newcomers Will and Rich. We'll later hear from the police that no bodies were recovered from the scene, so where did they go? We can assume that Phil, Theo, and Suzie met the same fate as Georgie in It Chapter 1. Their bodies taken deep within the sewers of Derry where they'll float above Pennywise's lair. Last episode we saw on Leroy's paper plans for a Paul Bunyan statue. In American folklore, Paul Bunyan is this larger-than-life figure who literally carved the mountains and valleys of the land. He's commonly associated with frontier logging culture, which Derry has a long tradition of. He is so beloved that even the Welcome to Derry sign prominently features him. Why then does most of the town seem to be against this statue? We'll see protesters outside the construction site, hooligans throwing an egg at his sign, and an old woman talking about how the statue is an eyesore. Paul Bunyan is the very thing the It entity hates, a cheerful, almost legendary figure that brings a community together. We can't have something like that interfering with its plans of division and fear, hence how it manipulates the citizens of Derry to turn against the very figure that's supposed to bring them together. In It Chapter 2, it will even weaponize Paul Bunyan, turning him into a murderous axe-wielding statue in one of Richie's visions. The episode hints at two ways its power manifests over Derry. The first is through corruption. Two councilmen pressure police chief Clint Bowers into arresting Veronica's innocent father, Hank. Clint Bowers might just be Henry Bowers' grandfather, whose father Butch was also in the force. The second way its power has taken over the town is through apathy. When Charlotte Hanlon sees a boy bullied across the street, no one else seems to care.
Boys will be boys.
Everyone turns a blind eye. This gets at the core symbiotic relationship between it and Derry. The two rely on each other. In exchange for providing it with a steady supply of corpses, Derry thrives. But when it's defeated, the town literally collapses. In the novel, water mains explode, streets buckle, and buildings collapse. Derry's sewers, mains, and tunnels that connect to its lair function like a nervous system. In this way, it is connected to Derry, and Derry connected to it. Speaking of Paul Bunyan, we have a brand new title credit sequence which has some interesting details that are easy to miss. The upbeat music and cartoon aesthetic counter the show's horror. We'll see familiar establishments such as the Jade of the Orient Chinese restaurant, the Music Man playing at the Capitol Theater, and Keen's Pharmacy, which featured prominently in the films. We have the sewer entrance to the side, and behind it the infamous Kissing Bridge. This is where Ben Hanscom was beaten up by Henry Bowers, and near where the Losers Club made their pledge to return to Derry if it comes back. It's actually located in Ontario, Canada, where the show is filmed. Our first look at Juniper Hill Asylum, the notorious Stephen King mental institute featured in such novels as Insomnia, The Tommyknockers, and Gerald's Game, just to name a few. It's also where Lilly will be taken at the end of the episode. Here we have the creepy Neibolt home, which sits atop the cistern leading to Pennywise's lair. You might have even noticed a red balloon. We transition to a nuclear bomb going off on a school projector, Bert the Turtle, and a clown hand on the machine. Speaking of clowns, Pennywise here, guns a-blazing as a group of townspeople massacre some gang members. This is a nod to an event in the novel called the Bradley Gang Massacre. Set in 1929, the Bradley Gang were a group of bank robbers who the citizens of Derry brutally slaughtered in broad daylight. Witnesses even recall seeing a clown on the scene. This event can also be seen on a mural in town. Later in the episode, we'll see a 1920s automobile filled with skeletons, cash, and Tommy guns dug up by the military. This is likely the same car and people from that massacre, but we'll get more into that in a bit. There's also a Bowers roadside produce shop just showing how connected the Bowers family is to town, and finally we get a depiction of another big Derry event known as the Kitchener Ironworks fire. The flaming bunny costume is a nod to this fire taking place on Easter Sunday, a fire which never should have happened considering all the machines were shut down. 102 would tragically perish, 88 children and 14 adults, with several bodies never recovered. Hints of this fire can be seen in It Chapter 1 when Ben Hanscom researches Derry's past tragedies. Arriving in town is Leroy's wife Charlotte and son Will. Will is Mike Hanlon's father from the films. They've come from Shreveport, Louisiana. We'll even see Louisiana plates. Now, there are a lot of interesting undertones in this family dynamic. For example, Leroy doesn't tell his wife the truth about how he was beaten up on base. Second, Leroy hasn't really built a strong connection with his son. His son is into science, reading, and learning, while Leroy is more of the let's throw a ball in the backyard and talk sports type of guy. In fact, it was Charlotte who bought that telescope for Will on Leroy's behalf. The neighbors don't seem too excited at the Hanlons' arrival. Charlotte will even get weird looks from the locals. Is this because she's black, or has it made the townsfolk weary of newcomers? We also don't know about Leroy's burn marks on his arm. My best guess is that this was sustained in some sort of Korean War injury, whether in a plane crash, battle, or torture as a POW in North Korea. I also think there's a pretty big setup here with this talk of a sextant, a navigational tool to measure one's position should traditional navigation malfunction. I wouldn't be surprised if Leroy or Will have to use a sextant in the episodes to come. During dinner, we learn there are some ulterior motives to the Hanlon family leaving Shreveport. It's implied that Charlotte was heavily involved in the civil rights movement. As Leroy states, she got too involved with, quote, making signs and sitting where she wasn't supposed to. This resulted in the family getting a brick thrown in their car window. Last episode introduced us to the mystery of the men in the gas mask. Although their identities remain hidden, we do pick up a little more information. Masters is picked up and confesses to the crime, although Leroy suspects he's innocent. The masked man who pulled a gun on him was adept at using a specific Russian gun known as the Makarov PM, a notoriously difficult gun to load and handle. Leroy knows this from his time as a POW in North Korea. Many of the North Korean guards had these handguns given to them by the Russians, and they struggled to get them to work. So when Masters reveals he too can't get the gun to load, Leroy knows he wasn't the attacker. So who are these men then? Later in the episode, we'll find that General Shaw set up this attack as a way to test Leroy's ability to handle fear. He heard when Leroy was in Korea, he damaged his small amygdala, a part of the brain that helps process fear. Shaw states that he needs a man who knows no fear, for this is a very special mission. Shaw won't disclose the names of the men who partook in this attack. Since Masters has been proven innocent, and it's highly unlikely that perpetrators were non-military, that leaves us with Dick Hallorann, his two drinking buddies, and Colonel Fuller. Dick Hallorann, who you may remember from The Shining, has had an eye on Leroy since episode 1. He'll even give Leroy a wink. In The Shining, a wink is what Dick Hallorann gives Danny the day of their first meeting. He'd be my number one guess. In Leroy's files, we'll see this quick shot of some empty Budweiser cans next to one of these gas masks. And it's Budweisers that Dick and his friends drink at the bar. But maybe it's just a coincidence. It's also entirely possible the plot may skip over this entirely if it's not relevant to the story going forward. But why would Masters confess to something he didn't do? My guess, he was coerced by General Shaw. Fess up to this crime and we'll let you go with this slap on the wrist. The guy is already on the brink of being kicked out of the military for past bad behavior. In this episode, both Veronica and Lilly face their first real it scares. Veronica's takes the form of her dead mother, where it's implied she died giving birth to her. Remember that it uses our greatest fears against us. For Veronica, this is the fear that she is responsible for her mother's death. And it's here we get our first glimpse of Pennywise with a hint at his eyes. This feeling of guilt is also experienced by Lilly, who feels responsible for her dad's death at the jarring plant. Her fear manifests in this weird dad pickle creature. This episode also foreshadows the Black Spot, a Derry speakeasy for African-American airmen to unwind. We'll see Dick and his two friends leave the town bar when they get a little too much attention. In the book, the Black Spot is burned to the ground by a group of racist men who trap and kill several black men inside. In the book, Will recalls seeing a giant bird with balloons on its wings during this event, implying its influence. Perhaps the biggest mystery thus far is Dick Hallorann and his connection to the military's top-secret Project Precept. Here's what we know. Dick is of extreme importance to the higher-ups in the military. This likely involves his telepathic powers. General Shaw tells Leroy that the Special Projects Building is the command center for a project aimed at preventing a nuclear strike from the Soviets. This project involves locating a weapon that's been buried in Derry for a long time. And this weapon is known to create debilitating fear. This is why Leroy is perfect for the job. The damage to his amygdala allows him to bypass this fear, or at least theoretically that's what's supposed to happen. The general doesn't say what kind of weapon this is, but I think it's safe to presume it's not of this world, just like the entity It. Dick's powers seem to allow him to locate either this weapon or the quote-unquote beacons surrounding the weapon. They are currently on their 4th dig site, with one of Dick's commanding officers starting to believe Dick is purposely leading them in the wrong direction so that he can enjoy the benefits bestowed to him by the higher-ups. It's possible this weapon could be elements of the asteroid that contained It that landed millennia ago. If the military could harness this power, they could destroy the Russians. Shaw refers to the beacons surrounding the weapon as objects. We'll see all sorts of miscellaneous objects in the Special Projects hangar. These include things like old baseball uniforms and cars. Are these the beacons they've been discovering at these past dig sites? Are the beacons remnants of It and Derry's past crimes? For example, if the automobile recovered at the end of the episode is from the Bradley Gang Massacre, are these dig sites ways for the townsfolk to cover up their crimes? Each dig site could be a past Derry tragedy where relics from them have been hidden away. These beacons all point toward the source of this evil, the It entity itself. Carefully watching the dig site are a group of Native Americans. Director Andy Muschietti has stated we'll be hearing a lot more from them as they have been on Derry land centuries before European settlers and likely know a lot more about its control over the land. If there's a theme to this episode, it's definitely throwing others under the bus. Marge throws Lilly under the bus in order to gain points with the popular kids, and Lilly throws Hank under the bus by sending him to jail, although to be fair, she was definitely coerced with the threat of being sent to Juniper Hill. We learn that she's actually been sent here before after previously experiencing a psychotic outburst after the death of her father. This is the place we see a child getting a lobotomy in the opening credits. I'm curious how long Lilly will stay here, and if we'll meet any other Stephen King characters roaming the halls. Now let's move into some hidden details. We learn Veronica's last name is Grogan. Veronica Grogan was a child victim found in the It novel. There's also an Edna Grogan in the film adaptation of King's novella, Mr. Harrigan's Phone. I love this shot of Charlotte framed between the alleyway with the Capitol Theater behind her. A similar shot featuring her grandson Mike is seen in It Chapter 1. The Underwood typewriter used in the military office is the same brand Stephen King used to write some of his early novels. The old woman at the butcher shop mentions she's a member of the Grand Dames of Derry. A Grand Dames of Derry sign can be seen on the Welcome to Derry sign alongside the Legion of White Decency. Tony's barbershop can be seen in It Chapter 1, and the Falcon Tavern, at least in the novel, is where Adrian Mellon, the man killed at the beginning of It Chapter 2, is beaten before being thrown over the bridge. In the It novel, it's described as a gay bar owned by Elmer Curdy, and Elmer is the name of the bartender here, although this is certainly not a gay bar. Colonel Fuller might be an ancestor of Vicky Fuller, the little girl lured under the bleachers and killed by Pennywise in It Chapter 2. The butcher, Stanley Kirsch, might be related to Mrs. Kirsch, a woman possessed by It that haunts adult Beverly in Chapter 2. The Teenagers from Outer Space poster in Veronica's room has been cited by King as part of the 1950s cycle of teen horror sci-fi films. Other posters in her room include A Raisin in the Sun and The Defiant Ones, both which tackle themes of racism. Master Sergeant Deavers here sounds very close to the Deaver family in another Stephen King-inspired show, Castle Rock. Two of the names of missing children on the posters, Danielle Van Helden and Colin Woods, are art designers on the show. I love this line Veronica's grandmother says, "You should all be ashamed of yourselves feeding off others' pain," just like Pennywise feeds off the fear of Derry's townsfolk. Masters refers to Leroy as Poitier, a nod to Sidney Poitier, the African-American actor who also stars in A Raisin in the Sun, a poster of which can be found in Veronica's bedroom. Calumet baking powder can be found in the pantry of the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. Now we get into our trailer sleuthing section where we take a look at the week's trailers at what could be in store for the episodes to come. Dick Hallorann over for dinner at Leroy's. Expect these two teaming up. Speaking of teaming up, we have Will and Rich alongside Lilly and Veronica, so it looks like Lilly gets out of Juniper Hill and patches things up with her. The kids meet with the police chief and are warned to keep their noses out of police business. Hank being chained and sent to Shawshank Prison. If he ends up there, he'd be there the same time as Andy Dufresne from the Shawshank Redemption. I went through this in my last video, but it's very much implied we'll be getting a Pennywise backstory. The Welcome to Set videos shows a ton of flashbacks at an old carnival. The kids venture into the Derry sewers, and joining them is Marge, a meteor plummeting to Earth which may depict the origin of the entity that is it. There are several shots of the town being overrun by smoke. Whether this is some sort of explosion, the sewers, or something similar to King's The Mist is yet to be known. The school children here floating and their eyes rolling to the back of their heads. Then there's a bloody Pennywise who the creators have said will appear more near the back end of the season. Dick Hallorann makes his way to Pennywise's lair. However, we don't know if this is one of his telepathic visions or if he's actually there. We'll later see him in a military aircraft where the edges are all blurred, definitely suggesting this is some sort of vision, one that may even involve the plane Leroy is supposed to be testing. We see a few glimpses of what is likely the black spot. Something pretty bad happens to Marge's eye, and later we'll see her with a full-blown eye patch. The kids here holding some sort of relic. Could this be one of the objects the military's been searching for? And can it be used to seal away it for good? Obviously it doesn't work, considering it appears in the next cycle. At one of the dig sites, we'll see this weird white rock-like object. Could it be a shard of Pennywise's meteor that crash-landed millennia ago? Many of the trailers show Pennywise framed against a fiery backdrop. Is this a flashback from the Kitchener Ironworks fire, or a new event entirely? I'm just excited we're getting closer to a full Pennywise reveal. But now I turn it over to you. What did you think of episode 2? I want to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe, and for more bad takes you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember,
Daddy loves you very much.